Kelly, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. I'm super happy you're coming on the show. You and I were sitting in Palm Springs, and I think there was a big concert going on. We met at the EY conference, and we got talking, and you had a really cool story, and I'm excited that you're willing to share it with our listeners. So for their sake, if you can maybe go back, like, what was the first decision you made to jump into becoming an entrepreneur? Where were you, and how did you end up deciding to actually formalize it and jump in with both feet?
Well, I guess I was working at a large company, environmental consulting firm with my business partner, who would turn into be my business partner, Amy. And we were just working on a lot of projects together, really enjoyed working together, worked really well together. And she was really becoming frustrated with the company we worked for and just felt like we had so much red tape we had to go through. She felt like we could just do things so much better if,
you ran it?
Yeah. I mean, and actually it was my idea. I said to her, I said, well, Amy, you should just start your own business. And she said, well, I could never do that. And she joked, she's like, I can't even balance my own checkbook. And I know she was teasing, but I said, well, I could do that for you. And it was funny. We were like in Maine, on a project, just having a few drinks at night. And we just started talking about it. And so, we just kind of laughed and thought, well, that could be cool. And then, a few weeks later, we continued talking about it and started thinking what the business name would be and how would we do this? How would we talk to the clients? We didn't have non-competes, which was good for us. Yeah. Then actually something happened at our company where one of her managers actually took about 10 individuals and moved to another competitor of ours. And so I called her up. She was actually on vacation. And I said, Amy, if we're going to start a business, like, we should do it now because they just left. Everyone's worried about this. If you and I just take one client, like maybe two, like, nobody's going to care. Nobody's, And so that's what we did. We started the company then. And yeah, I think people thought we were kind of crazy. I think they, kind of were, my supervisor, because Amy was not my supervisor. We worked together. She was a senior manager, but my supervisor said, okay, well, good luck. But if it doesn't go well, you're welcome to come back. Like, there was not much confidence, but it was awesome because we started off with a few clients right away and just kept running from that point forward.
Describe for us what was the nature of the business, because I think it's a really interesting business that you guys had. So what was the industry and what services and things were you guys doing for the clients?
We provided environmental and construction management services primarily to the energy industry, like natural gas primarily. And so that means when a pipeline is being built, we would do all the field studies, identify what kind of wildlife is there, what kind of endangered species, wetlands, and anything that needed an environmental permit from the federal and state agencies. That's what Amy and I did working at this other company. And then we added services along the way with AK, with our company, AK Environmental. And we helped our clients, build their projects and in compliance with all the federal and state regulations.
Well, I think it's interesting how you got there too for actually becoming an entrepreneur, because based on what you and I were talking about, I mean, you got an interesting education, right? Because weren't you, was it a biologist or a zoologist? It was your kind of ambition, and all of a sudden you're an entrepreneur?
Yes. No, my major was wildlife science, and I thought I was going to be working at zoos. I love animals and exotic animals. I actually had internships at the Cincinnati Zoo and Indianapolis Zoo. I'm from the Midwest, and worked with really cool animals like elephants and ostrich and kangaroos. And so what ended up happening from that part of my life was I just realized that it wasn't challenging enough for me. And so I started trying new career paths and new fields that would fit my degree. And so from the zoo, I went to like state and federal permitting, working for like a state agency and reviewing the permit applications, when things are being built. And so just giving the approval. And then again, that kind of wasn't as challenging for me as well. I just, I wanted to do more out in the field and experience it besides sitting behind a desk. And so somebody actually had mentioned when I worked at the federal government, they thought, Kelly, you would really like consulting. That's, they get to do all the field work. They identify the wetlands, and they do these endangered species surveys. So I had a connection through that contact to interview at a large company. And so that's where I met Amy. I worked there for 2 years, and just really, really enjoyed it. And really, there was room to grow. And I liked taking on more responsibility. I liked the challenges and learning new things. And yeah, I never envisioned myself being an entrepreneur.
Even though you just described the resume of an entrepreneur. So it makes sense now in hindsight, doesn't it?
I guess so. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. It's just that wanted to feel challenged. And then also helping. I mean, the thing with Amy was, I saw her potential. Like, I knew she could do this on her own.
What was her role versus yours in the company?
So I was just like an entry-level biologist at the beginning. So I did all the field work. I did the grunt work. I would travel the different states and identify the things that we needed to, and then do the permit applications. She was more senior manager, where bringing in the clients and then reviewing all the things that needed to go out, the documents that needed to go out to the clients. So we she had that sales experience. She had all the contacts. She had
bringing
all the
in the business. Yep.
Yeah, and so when I said, "Hey, I'll help you," it just was a good fit. We just really worked well together. When we started the company, we really did pretty much everything. All of us, both of us did everything. We were both in the field, where she wasn't necessarily doing that as much in the past at the large company, but we both did field work. The one thing she didn't do was the finances. She hates that.
You're advancing the checkbook.
Yeah. But I was like, I can handle that. I like,
That's awesome. So speaking of challenges, because what year was that? I guess to get.
So we started in 2002.
Okay, so in 2002, obviously we're in 2018 now. The challenges that you experienced following that, what were some of the bigger challenges and milestones that you think you guys hit and ran through?
I think cash was always an issue for us, because we're a service business. So it was fortunate. We had great relationships with our clients, and we were doing well, and they were happy. And so they were asking us to provide more services. And so more services is more people. And so, it was great because they set us up for our growth. I feel like our clients definitely did that for us. It wasn't as challenging to grow as fast as we did because of our clients and our relationships. But it was just the cash. It's just, to be able to pay for everyone every 2 weeks, that was the challenge. And we started
payroll.
the business. Yeah, exactly. Payroll. And so we started the business with we had to put some kind of money in the bank account just to be official, as our LLC agreement or whatever. And so I think we started it with $1,600 or something, because I remember the lawyer said, our Amy and I were 60-40. That's what part of our deal was. She was 60% owner. I was 40% owner. And, I think she had a number that she was going to put in, but I couldn't match the 40%. So that's why it came up with a weird, because I was only 25 at the time. Right. It was just me and my husband. And so anyway, so we started out with not having that much, but we were making $1,600,
and then the attorney's fees are probably $2,000 to set it all up, right?
I can't remember, but but it was but it was great because we were always making money. We were always profitable, which was awesome. But it was just that once we got larger, just being able to cash flow, and so there was definitely times where. Amy and I didn't pay ourselves for months. I feel like half of a year, because we grew so much in different times. I think 2007 was a big year for us, where we grew from 10 to 40, which now doesn't seem like much. Yes, 10 to 40 employees. Sorry. And that didn't seem, now thinking back, that doesn't seem like much, but that was so hard because
that's a lot of salaries.
Yes. And everyone was paid decent, it's not $5 an hour or whatever. It was a lot of, so that was a big jump for us, going from 10 people to about 40 people. And
can we dive into that a little bit? Because I think it's an important thing, because there's a couple of things that you touched on that I think is first of all, cash is always a challenge, but it's interesting because your clients are providing you the opportunity to grow. So maybe walk us through the cash cycle, because are you building projects up front that allow you to hire these people, or did you have to invest in 30 bodies and then go sell it? Because I think, and the reason behind the question, Kelly, is that I think some service businesses, they have to hire the people in order to sell it versus because of when and how their clients pay them. So there's that whole juggle of the float. So how did your guys' situation work?
Yeah, that's a good point. So no, where we started growing in that year was during our inspection services. So we had, so those staff are 100% billable. So, and so I think that was the year. So we won a project where we were going to provide 20 staff. And so they weren't part of our staff yet. So 20 inspectors, I'm sorry. Okay. But we had the resumes of them, and that's kind of our industry was, we had a network of people that we knew we could pull when we were ready, when we had the job. So we knew we had the people, we just didn't have to pay them until they were working, but still they're working for us for, probably at least 30 days before we get paid. So our clients were actually awesome about paying within 30 days, which, I've learned.
It's not always the case.
Exactly. And so, but they were awesome. Like it's, I was very, in the beginning, I'm the one that did all the invoices, it was just Amy and I that were the leadership. So like, everyone else that worked for us was billable and they were scientists or they were inspectors. And so I didn't invest in having somebody else work, doing all the finance stuff until later on, which I can get to later because I think I waited too long on that one. But I had to get invoices out by a certain date, so I knew the money would come in so that before the payroll. And I had it all timed out because it was that critical that we only had maybe 30 days before I was calling somebody for money.
And that's a little bit different than balancing a checkbook, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. Yeah. And I didn't know what we were getting into. That's funny too. It's like, oh, I can help you, Amy, but I didn't know what that meant. But we survived. But yeah, that, so I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's the challenges of I think the cash is always a challenge, and and as we dive more into the how the valuation and the eventual exit, but how and when cash comes in is always a big deal because it also dictates your reliance on a bank and other people, and how fast you actually can grow.
Right.
So let's go actually into that. Why you. When and how you hired that finance person, and what did they do for you? Why do you think you waited too long?
Well, they helped with, a lot. So we were services. So most of our staff, were billing out on an hourly basis, and sometimes, so there was a lot of time consuming invoicing, and even though we tried to automate stuff, we were invoicing every 2 weeks to get the cash flow going because and our clients were fine with that. Most of our clients were there. That was something we changed earlier on. I was being creative of like, how can I get more money coming in faster? So I was invoicing faster, and so that became our strategy. And so I guess the finance piece, hiring somebody, it's just that I was just doing too much on my own, and a lot of it that I was doing was finance. It was all the invoices, it was payroll, it was just the daily books, all of that stuff. I just felt I feel embarrassed to say it now, but I felt like I couldn't trust somebody else to do it. And I remember saying that in an article, and I was like, I can't believe I said that, but it was true. That's how I felt at the time. Like I just felt like this is our business. This is the critical piece. Like if we screw up on not paying people, they're not going to come back and work for us. At least I wouldn't,
Yep.
And so I just was really nervous to hand that over to somebody else. But then what I learned was, and I did try to hire a few different people, and that was again my bad of not knowing what type of person I really needed, and how I ended up using a recruiting firm because they knew my company almost better than I did because they'd seen different companies and they knew what stage I was in. And I didn't know if I needed a CFO or just a director of finance or a controller. So that was really helpful. It just happened a lot later than it should have. And when I say nothing happened to the business that was detrimental, it was just my stress.
I was going to say your sanity probably, right?
Yeah. And even my family. My husband will say that like, the woman that I ended up hiring her name was Diane, and he's always like, Diane, you saved our lives. Like,
That's
and
awesome.
we still hear, and he's, and she was, I love her and she was great. But yeah, it was just more my sanity. Yeah. That I was just really doing way too much.
So then as we continue progressing down the timeline, you go from 10 to 40 employees and you grew all the way up to 200,
Right.
So what were maybe some of the revenue benchmarks and the employee benchmarks as you're growing, and what are the benchmarks? And then underneath that, what was your thought process and where were you trying to go? Were there certain benchmarks that you were trying to hit? And, maybe just shed some light into the thought process.
Yeah. So we hit, let me see. So we started in 2002. We hit like 18 million in 2008, I think. I think that's right. And so that's when we started getting all this recognition for how fast we've grown. And so then we started, because of all this recognition, that was actually helpful to get us exposed to all these different business networks, and then to learn more about what we should be doing differently, or how others at our size are, managing things. And so from that point, we kind of fluctuated. I think we went to like 19 million, and then we actually had a dip in 2010 to like 14 million, and that was our first ever, we've been just on that, that hill going straight up, or the hockey stick or whatever. I don't know. And so having that dip was it kind of concerned us, but it was funny because we were still getting all that recognition from the years before. That it was great because I think it helped us turn 2010 to just turn it around in 2011. And I think I'll fast forward. So we ended up in 2013. Being close to 2012, we ended up being close to 25 million. It was like 24 point something. So we're close to 25 million. And so our goal was to try to get to 50 million. That was our goal. And that wasn't necessarily a number of employees or because we had different employees, different service lines. So it wasn't necessarily
because you're backfilling services. So it doesn't necessarily tie to, any kind of success because of how you're.
So, so at 50 was our goal, just because we had already started thinking about how we would sell the business. That kind of came about in 2010, just how we would exit, because Amy is at a different stage in her life. She was closer to retirement age. And so we knew that we felt like what we'd learned through different business networks and experiences, that was probably our best way to exit and for her to retire. And
so how did you start talking about it? Sorry to interrupt, but I think it's a conversation that I think a lot of people are freaked out about. Was it the dip in revenue that got you thinking differently, or like where and when, how did you shift from growth mode to big strategy mode? So
in 2010, it wasn't because we had a dip. It was actually because we did have a dip, but we were approached by a competitor that year to be purchased. And so, and it was a large company that we knew very well. And I remember talking to my accountant, as an advice, should we really go through with, even talking to them, because we're not there yet. I don't even know, I knew that we had this dip. The company probably didn't necessarily know, we saw it coming, but they knew, of all these awards that we'd received and how fast we had grown since 2002 and what we were doing and our clients. But anyway, she said, the advisor said, you should definitely go through with the process. It'll be a learning for you. You're probably going to do this at some point. And so going through that process was very educational, and realizing what our value was, and then how to really build it to where we were ready to exit. Because there were so many things I didn't know about the cost of the sale, how they would value us, and so that was. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think it's fantastic, because I think there's, a good chunk of the people that the first time they sell is the first time they go through the process. So, because we ended up selling a couple branches, which kind of gives you that, oh, wow, this is way more than we thought. So when you say that you learned a lot, maybe explain some of the process, and obviously you and your partner are having some epiphanies throughout the process. What were some of the main things that you took away from that process that you then applied?
I think probably at that point was that Amy and I were really the only real managers of the company. We didn't have that leadership team, is what we called it, or senior team, really below us. We had a lot of doers, and then there were us, but we just didn't have as much of a structure for leadership underneath us. And so so that was one of the things that we changed after that point. And actually in 2010, just so you know too, they actually made us an offer, but we didn't. Yeah, so they made us an offer even the way we were, but it wasn't it wasn't a good, it wasn't something we were interested in dollar wise. And so it was still very flattering though, to go through that and have this company that's a competitor, a large competitor, value us no matter what. The way, it was still, I thought, was very flattering. But we learned that, we need to have this structure in place so that we are more valuable, and to diversify, maybe try to get, we had probably 2 clients that were 70 to 80% of our revenue,
Oh, wow.
which is hard. And it's not, with our clients, they're working across the country. So they're working on various projects at one time. So it's not that we only had one project with those 2 clients, but it was just that they knew us so well, and it was that repeat work, and it was great. But just really trying to broaden our base so that we were, again, that would be more valuable to
Are
buyers.
they telling you that throughout the process? So I'm curious, did that competitor value you more in a strategic mind of, okay, they can scale, and they had a dollar amount because of a return on investment, or was it a multiple of EBITDA, or how did they come to that number? And then how did they explain to you the reasons, the client concentration, your management? How did you come to those realizations and how they affected the numbers? Does that make sense?
Yes. So I don't think, I know how we were valued when we did sell eventually. I don't remember. The number that they came up with wouldn't have been I don't think it would have been a markup of EBITDA, because the number that, so I think what that potential buyer was doing was buying some of our big clients at that, buying. And so I think that's why the value was lower. And then they would also be, for that client, or for that customer, that just probably wouldn't have used a lot of our staff. They probably would have been buying the contracts and then not necessarily keeping our staff, because they already did what we did and they had the staff to do all that. So I think that's why the value was lower. And so what was helpful to us was that investment banker that was the one that approached us for this potential buyer. I thought they were very helpful, because I think they knew that we could be working with them eventually in the end. And so I kept in touch with that investment broker, because I realized that they were kind of niche to our industry, specific to environmental engineering consulting. And so they knew a lot of people that could be potential buyers, and not just the competitors that we already knew about, but just, big base of potential buyers. And so I kept in touch. Well, we kept in touch with them over the years, just on a yearly basis, here's my financials. This is what we're doing.
Oh, cool.
I wanted to learn from them as well. And so I just felt like I knew that you had to pay for their services, but just keeping in touch with them like that, I felt like was probably beneficial to them to know what's going on with us. And then also it's beneficial to me to see, what kind of comments they have. And so I got as much free advice from them as I could over the years, until what we ended up doing was going with this broker, or this investment banker, in 2013, because we built this relationship, and they did, start helping us with some things, and just through conversations. And then in 2013, when we were ready, we decided to go ahead and sign with them for them to help us sell the business.
I think that's fantastic, because a lot of people don't. First of all, it takes so much trust and relationship when you're going through that process, to have someone that you can that understands you, can actually speak on your behalf. And was this individual giving you advice kind of on the management team and the client concentration and some of those tactical things, or was it more of the higher level? Here's what I think you could be worth, and here's what where were you getting those strategic decisions that you were making on where you were going with the business?
Well, I think with the investment banker, they gave us more of a higher level of, this is how this is what you could be worth if you at this size. And, they did probably help us. They did definitely give us some feedback about the, broadening the base of our clients, which we knew that, but it's just, being more focused on doing that. Mm-hmm. But I think with the other, with being more strategic with our leadership, I really got that from some of the business networks that I was part of, and specifically Ernst & Young Winning Women. Like that one was like a light bulb went off when we started talking about something, and just having that team underneath me. I think we knew we needed to do that, but I just always felt like, oh, do we have enough money? Like, it's going to be hard. I knew it was going to be hard at finding that right person and trust and things like that. But I think being with other business owners and seeing what they had gone through and talking about it and how they've come out on the other side, like that was key to us, to be helpful to really think about building that strategic team. And then just thinking bigger, like we really didn't have a number in mind. Like, that's where we kind of came with the 50 million. It was like, let's just go for it. Like, let's really try to be aggressive. And so, I think it's a mix of both.
I think that's really cool because as you're envisioning, as you're kind of shifting your mindset throughout going through that process, and now you're thinking differently, so to go from 50 million as a revenue number to having these conversations about value and timing and all that. So how did your goals change mentally for, you, or both you and Amy, is it a net dollar amount that you wanted? Was it, keeping your employees? Was it selling at a certain timeline? I mean, I think, how did you determine what was important to you in that eventual exit? Yeah,
that is hard because, so it did change my mindset. Like, I think when Amy and I started the business, and this is for me, I mean, I never envisioned we would sell the business. Like when we first started talking about it, probably before 2010, I thought, like, who's going to buy our business? Like, really? Like, that was so foreign to me. And so I didn't go into it thinking we would even be able to sell the business. And so we were just doing what we love to do and doing it the way we wanted to do it, and felt like we were treating the clients well. We loved our employees, and like we felt like that's how we felt like we were able to grow faster, was the loyalty with our employees and the employees actually spreading the word. I mean, I talked about the clients, helping us grow, but our employees as well. I mean, when we were looking for other staff, I mean, I had employees that were finding us other work too. I mean, like our employees were awesome, and because everyone has their own network. And so, it was I just remember one employee in particular said, he was approached by one of our clients and said, I want you to come work on this project. And he said, well, I'm not going to go work for you unless you hire me through, he was an older gentleman. And he said, I'm not going to work for you unless you hire me through the girls. Like he called Amy and I the girls. And I just thought that was funny. He was so sweet. But I mean, he got us more clients because, he had a network. And so anyways, I felt like we, the loyalty with the employees, because we treated them well, we paid them as best as we could, and we provided them as many benefits as we could as well. We felt like that was important. Okay, so I really just
I think it's important because, like, and actually, you're kind of alluding to the reason I asked the question, because if the first person would have bought you, if the first person would have bought you, they would have taken the contracts and the clients, and that was one of the things that you and I were talking with. Bobby Martin had issues with that, right? And how that was not necessarily something he was aware of, or what was important to think about. So you've got the gross dollar amount that you might sell the company for, and then there's the net dollar amount, which sometimes people don't realize is significantly different.
Exactly.
And then also what happens to the employees and who you might sell to. So like as you're reformatting your mindset and you're looking at what's important, so obviously your employees are important, but how are you determining how to interact all these different conflicting decisions sometimes?
Well, and then that's kind of where, thank you for reminding where I was going, because it did change my mindset. Once we knew we were selling, not that I still cared for the employees and everything, but it definitely became, for me, like working for AK. It was now like I was working for AK. Like AK was my company, and it was what I did, and I loved it. But then once we decided we were going to sell and we were really moving towards that path, it was really like focusing on the numbers, which I love numbers, but it became a different way of looking at the numbers, And so that, I think, I don't think I could have avoided that. It's just, that's where I became burnt out faster, because things just changed. We were looking for the end for good reasons. I mean, because for Amy to retire, and I definitely didn't want to go on without Amy. It wouldn't be the same. We started the company. It was AK Environmental, A for Amy.
So you just buying her out was not...
I didn't want to do that. I just didn't feel like, that could have been an option, but I just didn't feel like that was the right option. I didn't want to do that. And so starting to move forward to sell the business, it started becoming all about numbers, and we were always profitable, but like, can we make our margins better? And like, so it really, it did turn, and we were still treating the employees well, and we were still giving them all the benefits, even though, I wanted our margins to be better. We never sacrificed like, okay, well, let's cut 401k. We still kept those benefits, but but
keeping the people that you just want to hang out with on payroll for no reason becomes a little bit different, right?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So once to find a buyer, I mean, it definitely changed the feel for me.
What was the time frame between, okay, it was a mental shift. We're looking at the numbers. We're marching this direction. What was the time frame from when you mentally decided that to the actual event?
Probably from 2010 to 12. It was like, doing our best to change things, to get things in place. But then from like 12 through we sold in 2014. That's when things became, I started to become like just paranoid about the numbers because, just because we had gone through that dip before when we hit, about 25 million in 2012, foreseeing what 2013 would look like, I just didn't see significant growth, and we had been growing like significantly, we felt like, and so I thought, I know a little bit now about what it would be like to sell your business. You want to always be going on a high. You don't want to sell while you have this dip, and I was just like trying to just be realistic of the right timing to sell. And then also how Amy and I were feeling in the business. Like I definitely was starting to get burnt out in like that time frame. The larger you get, the more problems you have. And it just, it just was getting exhausting. So I think I was emotionally kind of getting burnt out, and I was, it's just, you never know when the right time to sell is. And so, just constantly thinking about that and talking to Amy about like, are we there? Are you burnt out? Am I burnt? And so when we decided, 2013, we met with the investment broker probably that first quarter, and we discussed things with him, and then we decided, okay, we're going to sign the papers with them. It was a group. During the fourth quarter, we're going to do this. So we thought about it seriously for that pretty much a majority of that year in 2013. And when we signed with them to help us sell, I think we signed like in September, and then we were done. Like we were sold out of the company by it was March 21st of the next year.
Wow, that's pretty accelerated. So, and by the way, when you're burnt out like that, it becomes a lot less fun to not pay yourself and to be juggling cash, right? It's not for a blind passion because you love what you do. It becomes more of it's a totally different dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah. And luckily, we were paying ourselves then, but still, it was just like it was just. It's just stressful. I mean, business is stress. And it's not fun. I mean, I know maybe a lot of people thrive on it. What I'm learning is it seems like a lot of people thrive on stress. And I mean, it really affected me like physically and emotionally. And I just didn't want to live like that. And, so anyway. I've been there. I totally get it.
Yeah. So when you're like the emotions, when you sign that, you're probably already having a little bit of like relief that you made the commitment to go that direction. Did you guys have an idea? I mean, because you'd already been talking to the investment banker throughout the time, so I'm assuming they were kind of shedding some light, but who and what the options were? Was it like financial firms like private equity? Was it, a public company like I think you eventually sold to? Was it competitors? What was the idea in your head of what your probable outcome was going to be?
Yeah, I think in our head when we signed with them, we figured it would probably be a competitor.
Oh, really?
But this was interesting though, because I mean, again, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, there's this whole world of what they do. And I mean, when we signed with them, they're like, okay, we're going to set up this executive summary for you, go through your financials. But then we've got this list of like, hundreds of companies within our network that we know are either looking or have bought companies in the past. And like I said, they were kind of niche to our industry, so they knew us very well. But they were going through. So we spent time like going through this list with them and rating each company by whether we knew them, if we were interested in. They were international companies that we never heard of, and so we spent time, a few days, just like going through that, and then so that just was like eye opening, because there was just so many companies I never thought, why would this company in Australia be interested in us, but. And so we narrowed it down to like
what were 20. Sorry to interrupt, because I think it's important, because everybody buys a company for various reasons, whether it's a return on capital because they're coming from a PE firm or strategic reason. As they're explaining why these people are, what were some of the oh, that makes sense that you might have heard? And then that's my first question, and then I got another one that ties up after that.
Okay. Yeah, I think most of them were interested in, our clientele was natural gas and energy. So like energy, I feel like is always big, but it was especially big then, and I still now. But so I think they were interested in what our clientele. And so like there were international companies that just wanted to maybe get to get a footing in the US. And so they thought so there were some that were interested in, that they thought would be interested in us because of those reasons. None of them were PEs. So they were all PE firm, like, but they were all, yes, sorry. But most of them were engineering or construction, other environmental firms. So in a way, competitors, but probably not in our space.
Like diversifying products and services and buying clientele so they can overlap selling and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you were, as you're going through rating that, and you're, going back to what your passion for your employees and such. I mean, were you getting any kind of guidance on how each person would treat the employees or the acquisition? Did you have any idea when you're rating them, or did you find that stuff out later as you're talking to people?
I think we knew some of them, like some of the companies that were in the US that were large. We had an impression on some of them just based on past acquisitions of other companies. So we heard through the grapevine, like maybe had an idea of what would happen. Mm-hmm. So there were some that maybe we avoided because of that. But otherwise, just in that until we met with the companies that were specifically interested in us, that's when we started to get a better feel of like, maybe how they would go through it. What would happen? Yeah, with our employees.
So when you said with the investment bankers and in your head, when you and Amy sat down, was it, hey, this is the number we both want? Because was it a net number? Was it a gross number? And then what were the stipulations? Like, don't want to work there, or don't mind, or have to keep our employees? What was it that you described that you wanted? And then maybe that kind of jumps into the second part of the question, which is, how did it actually turn out?
Right. Yeah. So we definitely had. We had a net number. So we went in knowing and again, I think because of our experience, we knew there were going to be costs. And so I think a lot of people I've talked to don't realize like some of these significant costs when you sell a business. And so we had a net number in mind, but when we decided like, this is the time we're both burnt out, like, hey, I don't know how much our revenue is going to grow next year. We knew, okay, we're probably not going to hit that net number, but Amy and I had already kind of decided that before we went in with the investment banker. And then they broke it down, and then they said, okay, here's, I think your multipliers are going to be between here and there. And, hopefully I think they're going to be at the higher end because of these reasons. So, but still we felt like we were probably going to be less than that net number that we said we wanted. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I tell people is like, just know what you need, because and it's probably hard to also figure out what you really need. But we were hoping to, Amy was retiring. This was her exit. I wasn't sure if it would be the end of, my career. I didn't think it would be. I didn't think I would continue on with the company. That was not my goal. It wasn't Amy's goal to continue on with the company. We were open to a few years, but we were selling to exit ourselves, mm-hmm. And that was kind of tricky too, because, knowing how to say, not sure what the other company is looking for as well. Like, do they want me to stay or do they want me to exit?
Yeah, how much you willing to pay me for how long, and what are the terms and conditions, right?
Yeah, and because I think we met with a few companies that were, I think were interested in me staying, and I made it clear that that's not my goal. And so, sometimes I'm thinking, well, maybe I was a little bit too honest, but that's just, I think it's better to be honest than not. But, going through that, it's like you're kind of not necessarily dating, but in a way, you're like trying to get to know these people like very over a short period of time. And it's a major deal. And are we going to work well together? And, how much should I really share with you about,
Am I going to shoot myself in the foot by not getting a certain dollar amount or certain terms and conditions because of what I said? Right. And I think, based on your process, how many buyers were coming to the table? Because first question, how many buyers that came to the table? And then how did that impact the negotiation and getting what you want?
Right. So we ended up we had like 20 people review our document. We had 15 companies that we met with within 1 week, which was crazy.
Holy cow.
Meeting all those companies within 1 week at time was crazy. But then after that, there was one buyer that was on a time crunch. So like there was other buyers that were interested but not ready to do it before the end of the year. And so we had 3 people come to the table at the same timing as this more aggressive buyer. And so instead of, because there was a few other companies that were interested, but they wanted to wait. And maybe that was their nice way of saying, like, it's just not going to work. But it was our impression that it just wasn't the right quarter for them. They were going to need a little bit more time.
Could be negotiation tactics too sometimes, you know.
Yeah. So we had 3, but there was really just one that was very, very aggressive, very serious. And the other 2 weren't, the offers weren't as, they didn't compare. So I mean, we had the 3, but the one we ended up going with was definitely the better deal for us.
So did they shoot over like a number? Was there a letter of intent that had a bunch of, kind of here's the outline of everything, and then you dove into due diligence? Maybe give us a couple of milestones of the timing of that.
Yeah, they sent us over 11, 10, and you know what? I think, if I remember this correctly, I think that they wanted to close by the end of that year. So we met them in September. Yeah. And so they, at first, they were the only ones that came back and within that timing. And I felt like we should wait. And so we didn't know if we were missing the deal, but we just went back and said, okay, we're not ready yet. But then that first quarter, they were still interested after we said, because we were waiting for those other 2 offers to come in. So they ended up sending us a second letter because, that first one had a timing of the end of the year. So they sent us a second letter and we felt like, okay, we're ready to go because we saw these other offers. And so once we signed the letter, we did, there was some negotiating on that letter of intent, like how the deal was going to be broken down. That's a whole learning process too, because you think, or at least for me, I'm like, okay, we're just going to get cash. Like,
right.
Or I feel like that's what I want, like that's what and so the process of that, because they actually wanted to give us more stock than what we were wanting to take. And so our deal was a mixture of, I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, this is great because I think, so because I think that's all part of the negotiation. I actually there's one of my episodes I interviewed this gentleman who was kind of on the advising side, and it was like, you tell me the price, I'll tell you the terms, because it's like, hey, here's millions of dollars, but like, it's not in cash, right? There's all these caveats. So, how did you guys go to figure out what was it, a combination of stock, retention, or non-competes, or cash?
Yeah.
Like, how did they actually go about negotiating that? And then how did it actually end up getting structured?
Yeah, they, we had our, part of our team was our M&A lawyer and our M&A accountant with our investment banker. And so, they came back with, I think it was stock, cash, and then a note. I think the note was always in there, employment agreements. And so we just were kind of trying to figure out what we could live with and what we felt most comfortable with. So we went back and forth a few times. And so what we ended up was, a percentage of cash up front, and then a smaller percentage of stock than what they originally had said, and then a note payment over 3 years. And I wasn't familiar with what a note was, and I'm like, okay, are we really going to get that money? But they the lawyers and everything said, unless they go bankrupt, you're going to get that money. So, but it's all these things, trust, like, this is such a big deal. And is this, so it was great to ask my network, not even just my advisors, but just ask the network of people that I know as well that have gone through this. Like, what did your deal look like? Does this sound right? Like, 'cause my advisors are there for me. I know that, but I'm paying them as well, and they want the deal to go through too,
Right.
So it was nice to be able to reach out to some other women that have gone through this and get their feedback. But,
did it change in between your negotiated LOI, and explain maybe in a couple sentences the due diligence process?
Due diligence was not a couple of sentences. That was like, God, I thought I was stressed out before the sale.
Oh, and I laugh because of your face reactions. Well, the listeners don't realize that we're actually on video right now, but yeah, it's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and so due diligence, so all that's like kind of going back to like, Amy and I's original agreement. Like, she didn't like all the, numbers and blah, blah, blah. So that like really fell on me, which I was totally fine to handle. But, we're growing a business. There's a time constraint that you have to get all this stuff. And then it's for the way we did everything it was secret. We didn't tell any of our staff until the day it happened. Mm-hmm. And that was what was recommended to us. And I understood why. And I agreed that that's what we should do. But, so I had to run my normal day to day. And then behind the scenes, I was doing all this due diligence, and it was just, it's just stressful. All the questions they're asking you, and you try not to be defensive, and and it's just business, but it's like, they're picking at things, and why do you do it this way, and why, and then the terms that you might not. That's why it was great to have like an investment banker to help me through that, because and I know people do it different ways, but like that, they made me feel more confident that they could help me. These guys that were buying us have bought multiple companies, and they've built a company before and then sold it, and now they're building another one. They're so experienced, and then there's just me, and Amy, and so it was definitely. I mean, I had no clue how stressful it would be.
It's like a full cavity search, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, we didn't have anything to hide, but it was just it's just a lot. It's a lot of information, and it's.
How did you go about, like, because when we were going through it, as they were looking at contracts and stuff like that for us, or even like our clients, anybody that needs to see the contracts. And so, when you're going back and requesting information from your employees, was there any kind of, first of all, how did you feel about that? Because you feel like you're kind of hiding something. How did you feel? And then how did you actually go about getting the information from them without actually telling them?
Well, I don't know if there was anything. I'm trying to think if there's anything I had to go, like, that I had to go back for my employees. I don't think there was stuff that I had to. I mean, the main person I had to go around or through was at that point, I think she was director of finance. Mm-hmm. So she would, luckily I liked that stuff, and I was doing a lot of this stuff myself, but like just running reports and different things like that. So sometimes I'd have to ask her, can you run this report for me? I need it for whatever. Like, I tried not to lie, but I didn't want to be suspicious, but I just felt like it was best for everyone if we didn't share. And the reason why I felt like, I just know people get scared, and I mean, this is a hard topic because, like, Amy and I are a great match because we have different strengths, and I would feel like is more the emotional, like the bigger heart. Like, I think I'm a good person too. I think I have a good heart, but like, she was really, really like, she felt, I think, worse about not telling the employees than I did, because she felt like we were lying to them. But I had to remind her, I said, I don't want this to sound cool, but this is our company. Like, you and I started this by ourselves. We didn't pay ourselves for 6 months. We mortgaged our house, or like, all this is on us. And so, like, this is our exit. Like, I don't feel that we're, setting up. I agree that I don't want to, I'm not going to just the employees, like, send them off on their way and not care what they're doing. I feel like we're going to set them up for success. And I know that they're all, I mean, they are all highly qualified. They're good at what they do. So they're going to be valued. And I just really felt like that. And so, but I felt like for this transaction, this is about you and I, Amy, this is what we built. And like, sometimes I just felt like I was more of the.
Well, you were rational, very rational, because no, I really mean that, Kelly, because, even though your best employees are there, people go into survival mode, and next thing you know, you got your key employees looking for jobs because it's unknown, and people are freaked out of the unknown, and then it's bad for everybody. So it's literally the prudent thing to do, but it is difficult. So how'd you guys tell them then? So that's I flew in. So I'm in North Carolina, and our main office was in New Jersey. We started in New Jersey, and I moved down here later. So anyway, I flew in that morning, and the team that was, the company that was buying us was flying in later that afternoon. So we had set up a leadership meeting with our senior staff. We called them our leadership team, and it was just like 5 or 6 of us. And so we had already planned for everybody to come in, because most of our staff, again, a lot of us were remote. So like, we had staff in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, but then we had staff across the country. And so we had other people flying in from different states for this leadership team meeting. And so that was the first thing we were so nervous. I was going to say, the stomach ache is terrible, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And I was like, I just hope we don't cry. Like, and I knew it. So, but we didn't. And I said, and honestly, the way we explained it, and I still believe it, it's just like, we felt like, we saw the potential in where AK could go. We kept growing, but we felt like we were almost kind of blocking the way. Like, I just felt like there needed to be. I felt like we kind of gotten it as far as we could have gotten it. At least that was my mindset at that moment. And I just really felt like I'm burnt out. Like, I just don't know how much more I can do. I don't feel like it's fair for us to just like level out at wherever we are, or dip again. I don't know. And so I felt like we're, positioning, selling the company to
another company who is buying us strategically because they don't do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed all of us. They needed our staff. They needed our expertise. So I felt confident that, hey, we're going to be part of this bigger company, that you're going to continue to do what you're doing, but it's going to be more opportunity for you, more, bigger client base, more management, ability for them to move up. I mean, things like that. So that's how we explained it. And I feel that way. But I mean, it's also hard too, because I mean, that's what they loved about our company though too. I mean, a lot of our staff came from large companies. And so they liked the family feel. They liked that they could call me at any time. And people would say, I've never been able to talk to, my title was vice president. I mean, Amy and I were co-founders, but she was president and I was vice president. And we had staff that were like, I've never been able to just call up the vice president and talk to them whenever I wanted to, or the president. Amy and I were always available, and so we did have that family feel. And so I think they were nervous about that. But we told them, hey, we're going to be here. And that was something you asked me I didn't answer. Was Amy had a 2-year agreement and I had a 1-year agreement, and so I said, we're going to be here for the transition. And again, that's another thing we didn't tell them. We didn't tell them we have a 2-year agreement and I have a 1-year agreement. We just said, hey, we're going to be here.
Yep.
We're going to help continue it to grow and blah, blah, blah. And because, just because we had a 1-year agreement didn't mean that, or that I had a 1-year agreement didn't mean that I couldn't stay longer if things were going well. So I feel like my strategy is just never tell people too much if you don't need to, because you don't necessarily know that, you don't know what it's going to be like in a year. I mean, maybe it would have been there.
Yep.
Right.
Well, and what was it? Let's go back to what was it like, Kelly, when you signed? Like, what was the emotional state, and what were you thinking when that happened?
For me, it was like, I felt relieved. Like like I said, there was just so much stress building over the last few years and of those years. And I have young daughters or they were younger at the time. And I just didn't want my life to be just work all the time. So like for me at the moment, I mean, I wasn't sad. I was happy. I felt relieved. I felt like we did it, like it went, we made it here and we sold and what's next, but I didn't really feel sad.
How did that change as you were, you built this baby, and everybody refers to founders that have to pass on their baby. As you're going through the integration with the new company, I mean, how did it feel giving away everything you'd built? Yeah.
The hardest part was like, I always felt like I wasn't a control freak. And so maybe I am, and I didn't realize it. But it was more the fact that I was able to solve problems. So that's when I lost control of when I integrated all the finances and everything that I had my finger on before. And if an employee called me and, I could fix it right away. And so once everything was integrated, so we sold it was March. I mean, everything was integrated by August. I feel like it was fast. It was within a few months. And then, when I get a call from an employee that this happened, I can't do anything. So I call them, I call, the owners now and say, hey, this happened. And I was open to, how can I help you with this? I know I have no tools to be able to do it myself now, but can I help you solve this problem? And that was the hardest part, because the way they solve problems is not how I would solve problems. And I feel like they made it, I feel like, that was the hardest part, because I think a lot of us just like to, that kind of goes back to the beginning of the whole business is I just wanted to help Amy. I knew she could be successful. So I just wanted to help her and make this, make this company, but just, so not being able to help somebody is just
paralyzing.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God. And it's so frustrating. And so, yeah, that was a hard time, that my year that, I was with them, after I lost control. And I even hate saying lost control, but it was.
We're control freaks. Come on, entrepreneurs are control freaks. That's why we're willing to deal with crazy amounts of stress and risk just to be able to make a decision on our own, even if it's wrong.
And that's what it is. It's being able to make that decision. Yeah, it's just, and I couldn't, and they didn't even really necessarily want my advice either, which was I mean, so, you meet, it's you meet people but I don't know their whole story. I don't know all the things they've gone through in different acquisitions. You know what I mean? So I can see that they probably have gotten bitten by things that they did in the past and trying to do different things with us. But that was hard. That was frustrating.
When you look back, what's one thing that you might have done differently?
Like for the sale or just in general, the business?
Just in general, if there's one thing that you say, you know what, throughout growing the business or, throughout the sale, or even, that kind of leads into my second part of the question, which is what you're doing now. Is there maybe a better question is there anything you would have done differently?
I think the only thing, I kind of talked about this before, is just hiring the senior leadership underneath us. Like I was just naive to the fact that, I don't know. I knew that I didn't know everything, but I guess I felt like nobody else would care as much as I did. And I think you can find the right people and, that have the passion that, they care just as much about the company as you do. And so I think I definitely waited too long. And I think, to hire, and then I think too, at least for me, using a recruiter for these like really strategic hires, that was key. Like if I would have met that recruiter like 3 years prior, I would have totally hired somebody then. Like I just didn't know what I needed to hire. And that recruiter helped me with the confidence of like, okay, this is really what you need. And I know this because of this. And then interviewing multiple people for this, like I said, controller, CFO role, because our company was growing. And I, it's just like, I don't know what kind of level of finance person I need. But that, and I think that goes for any kind of like senior level position, is that just having that team underneath you, because it alleviates the stress then. And then I think I may have been able to last a few years longer. Our company, Pete, my husband, jokes that like, and he's just joking, but you never know the right time to sell your business. But, I mentioned the fear of like, okay, we had about 25 million and 2013 was about the same, around 25 million. So I wasn't sure what 2014 was going to be like, and we had to make a projection for the sale and all that, and that's hard. So we projected, conservatively, but we blew that out of the water. We like hit 30 million that year, and Pete's like, "Man, you should have sold that." Like, you never know, but
don't think about it, right?
Yeah, you think about it. But I think I was just so burnt by that time, and I think going back to your question is like, if I would have had that support system underneath me, and it's my own fault. It's nobody else's fault besides myself. It's just not really getting that right support.
I think a lot of us are very much in the same boat where I think you nailed it when you said it's about caring. It's not necessarily the control. It's about caring as much. So now that you've been out for a couple of years, what are you doing now? How has life after business and actually been treating you, and how have you adapted to the new version of what you're doing?
Life is great. Like my husband said, once I was done, once I had finished with the company that bought us, he's like, just take a year off, don't do anything, like don't worry about anything, just relax. And I've always loved to volunteer, and so I just started doing more volunteer work, and so that year went by, and I'm like, okay, I still don't know what I want to do. And now it's almost been like 3 years since I left NV5, and I think what I've decided is, or at least at this moment, I really enjoy mentoring other businesses. If that's either through volunteer programs, like there's different groups within the Triangle. I'm an angel investor with a group here, and so I like being part of the entrepreneurial community and learning about what others are doing and seeing if I can be helpful in any way. I've kind of explored, like, could I ever work for somebody? And right now, I don't think I could.
You know what someone said to me once, and I just loved it, how they phrased it. I think it was Norm Brodsky's podcast interview. He goes, or it was like, I'm professionally unemployable.
Yes, I think I am. Yeah, it's just not that I couldn't. I think I could get along with people, but I think it's so hard. Like you said, it's not even the control. It's like being able to make that decision on your own. And I don't want to have to ask somebody. Like, right. I don't know. It's just
even if it's a colossal failure, at least I did it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, no, I'm just So I'm just enjoying my time. I've gotten to do more traveling with my family. We went on a cross country RV trip, like a summer, not last summer, but the summer before, which was awesome.
Oh,
And so just, and my girls are now like 10 and 13, which, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast. If you have a daughter, right? Is
twin girls that are one.
Girls. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get some serious advice from you on other topics later.
So yeah, it's so nice to be available and present. You know what I mean? Like that was something I talked about with some friends last year. Is like, I just really want to be present with my family and be home and I don't know if it's just something I need to work on, but when I've got a project or when, with AK, it was always in my head. It was always on my mind. And if we're sitting at the dinner table and, even though I worked from home a lot, I'd turn off the computer at 5 and come out, but it's still going on in my head, And so I always felt like there were things that I just missed in conversation. And I think now, especially with Sonora being a teenager, it's just so nice to really try to be present and understand what's going on. And I know not everybody can do that. So I feel like, I should take advantage of this time. Like if I can, which I can, I think I'm not going to rush into something. Yeah, I don't want to rush into doing something, keeping myself busy with something else. I want to, just try to be more present with my family and then do the things I like to do, which is like volunteering and get to know other entrepreneurs. And, I mean, there's people I meet that, there could be potential businesses happening, but like, I think it'll just happen.
Your relationship with those potential businesses might be a little bit different then though, based on your experience, huh?
Yeah.
So Kelly, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
I think LinkedIn. Yeah. Do I like just Kelly Caldwell? I don't even know.
Yep. And then I'll have it all in the show notes as well.
Okay.
So yep. So they can get in touch with you there. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I absolutely had a blast.
I had fun too. Thank you so much for your interest in my story.